You're listening to the Higher Grade Help Podcast, tips and strategies for service providers. In this podcast, we will be discussing the best practices for hiring and building a great team in the service industry. We'll cover topics such as finding top talent, conducting effective interviews, managing tough conversations with team members, and onboarding new hires. Whether you're a small business owner or a manager at a larger organization, this podcast will provide you with valuable insights and strategies to help you hire and retain the best team members. Tune in to learn how to grow your business through effective hiring, team building, and workforce development. Okay, welcome to another episode of the Higher Grade Help Podcast. Today is going to be a really special episode. Reason being is we have a bomb guest and I want to introduce you to on today's episode, Miss LaToya Frazier. She is a business strategist. LaToya is if you don't know, you need to learn and do a couple of more runs around the ring because LaToya is one of the experts of this space. Okay. Ask somebody. LaToya is a 2 times published author. She's a podcast host, a business strategist, and not to mention a busy mom of 3 who stepped out on faith and left her corporate career after 20 plus years to pursue her dream as an entrepreneur. She used her business and her personal experience to build a profitable and sustainable online business. And let me just give you a little bit of receipts and just to let you know why you should listen to LaToya when it comes to how to plan your online course content. She's been featured in places like Voyage Dallas Magazine, and she's a certified content marketing and customer value optimization specialist through Digital Marketer. Yes, the Digital Marketer. She empowers others to increase their impact and revenue by teaching them how to package their gifts and expertise and monetize them into a profitable program. So, Miss LaToya, welcome to the Higher Grade Help Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
You are welcome. I couldn't wait for this. I was really excited when you said yes. Reason being is, we've had this wave of course creators hit the industry over the last couple of years. And so I really want to talk about some of the best ways to plan that online course content and what you would suggest are some of the best practices based on your years of experience in this field.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, thank you so much, Tina, for having me. And when it comes to online course content, one of the things that I have to tell people all the time that it's not cookie cutter, right? Because everyone's content is different. There's there's method to the madness, and there's a framework that you could use. But people always think that they have to stick to one particular way. I like to give a framework. You plug your information into that, and you kind of make it do what it do. So when we talk about online course content, there's one thing about planning the content. And then the second thing is about implementing the content, right? So I talk to people all the time. They say, well, I know what I want to do, whether it's a course, whether it's a signature program, but they just don't know what they need to do in terms of getting that information out of their head and actually into a space where others can consume it, right? So that's one of the things that I'm excited about sharing with your community today.
Yeah, well, okay. So you just kicked it off right there. I want to dig into that first part you mentioned. What's the importance for, just give us a 30,000 foot view. What's the importance of really planning out the content that you're going to put out versus just packing your program with information, information overload? What's the importance?
There's so much importance to that because here's the thing. I always encourage people to focus on one solution, right? We want to help people. We have so many expertise inside of us, so much that we want to just give everything at once. But I always tell people focus on one particular area first and then identify the goals. What do you want your customer or your client to gain after they take your course? Right? Because you can create multiple courses or multiple programs, but if you have three or four things that you're focused on in one program, some people may get confused. And then also, everything is not for everybody. So if you focus on one particular thing in your course or your program, then you can attract the right customers or the right clients for that particular program.
Yeah. My experience with that too is I used to be the info overload, and I wanted to solve 10 different problems in one course. But like you said, two things happened. One, people would get confused, but two, they would not return as customers. And it was affecting my retention. So I said,
Yes,
okay, we have to take into consideration the adult learning process, like how brains process information, and we have to think about that. So focusing on one, and then it makes it too puts you in this category where, like, if you're solving one problem, you become known for that thing, and
absolutely.
people know to go to you, so it helps your marketing. I agree with you. So if someone okay if some okay so I know our audience is typically service providers. We have some coaches out there, high ticket coaches, a lot of course creators. So if someone in the community was listening to you and they're like, okay, LaToya, I know I need to do the one problem thing. What's the process to plan so that you're solving just one problem?
She always says, one program will change your life if you let it.
That's good.
One program will change your life if you let it. So, like you were saying, focusing on that one program, you become known for that particular thing in the industry. So, one program will change your life if you let it. If you don't take nothing else away from this this talk, take that away. Okay, so let's get into it. So, when it comes to creating your signature course or program, the first thing that I would recommend is identify what problem you're solving, right? So, we already talked about focusing on that one thing. So it makes it easier for your customers to determine if this is the right program for them, because you don't have a bunch of different things that they have to focus on. It's that one thing, so you want to identify what problem that you're solving. The second thing is, a lot of people skip this, is the goals. You know, I feel like every program should have a goal, and you need to create goal statements around your goal. What is the goal for your program? What do you want your customers to achieve or your students to achieve after they've taken your course? So this is important for two reasons. The first reason is that they need to know exactly what they're going to get if they take your course. If I there's so many. I mean, I know I'm not the only one. I'm definitely guilty of purchasing courses and not finishing them, right? Or purchasing a course, finishing them, but not taking the next steps in terms of implementation. So when you make it clear, if you're focused on that one thing, that helps your customer identify exactly what it is that they're going to get from taking your course. And then the second thing with that is, I always tell people to think about it from a testimonial perspective, right? So if someone takes your course, what do you want them to say about your course after they've completed it? They've taken your course, you've promised them that, at the end of this course, you're going to be able to do X, Y, and Z. So if they were able to achieve those things and you ask them for a testimonial, what do you want them to say about your program? So you can think about those things from a testimonial perspective, and that will help you identify like your goal statements. So you always want to have some type of goal. If it's, 1, 3, 5, whatever, but there should be some type of goal that you can look at the end of your program. And a lot of people look at goals from a monetary perspective. And one thing that I want people to be open about is also thinking about, especially if you don't have a list or you're in the process of building your list. One of those goals could be that you want to increase your list size by a certain number. So maybe you have 1,000 people on your list that you're going to be marketing your course or your program to. You may want to say, one of your goal statements could be, I want to increase my my list size by 1,000 new customers, 1,000 new prospects. So don't always think of it in terms of monetary, but also think of it in terms of building your list. You want to make sure that you're building your list for buyers that may purchase from you in the future. And, they say that people have to, be exposed to you, up to 7 times, right? In order for them to, to purchase your programs. They have to like and trust you and things of that nature. So what are you putting out there to be able to grow your list for people to purchase from you in the future?
That's good. That last one was good. I want to go ahead and finish, and then I want to come back to that point. That was good.
Okay, perfect. All right. So the next step I always tell people to do is brain dump. Now, this could be the fun or not so fun part, right? Because when I think about, the things that I want to do and the things that I want to get out there and share with people, there's so many things in our head, but especially if you're working with a team, you got to get those things out of your head and, on a Google Doc, on paper or something where you can share with, your team or whoever may be helping you launch your program or your course. So I always say, do a brain dump. So I have a really strategic way of doing this. And I like to give people the example of, think about it as if you are cleaning out your closet, right? So we're taking all these things out of our closet. And so we have a pile of things that we need to either donate or keep, right? So we think about it in terms of, okay, here's all the things that I've taken out. Here's the keep pile. Here's the donate pile, here's the use pile, or whatever. Okay, so think about it in the same terms of your content. You have to get it out of your head and decide what you're going to do with it. Am I going to use it in this course? Am I going to just do away with it, or I'm going to use it for something else in the future? So I have 3 rules when it comes to brain dumping. And I have clients where we have to sometimes just get on a Zoom session because I need the information out of their head. They're explaining it to me. I'm excited. I'm like, yes, we need to get this course out into the universe. People need this. And I was like, you're selfish for keeping this to yourself. So let's get it out here in the universe, but I have to get it out of their head first. So I think I tell people to think about it in terms of journaling, right? So when you journal, or, you should just write, just freely write. Don't even worry about, punctuation, spelling, any of that stuff. Just get it out of your head. So the first thing is to do, my first rule is to just write and just get it out of your head. Don't worry about anything. And then number 2 is don't overthink it. Now, I'm an overthinker. I'm trying to, come out of recovery, but I'm an overthinker when it comes to different things. So don't complicate it. Just write it. If you think it's something that may be valuable to your course or your program, just write it. And we'll come back later and determine if we're going to use it or not. But just get it out there. If it's enough to be holding space in your head, it's enough to get it out there, right? And then the most important thing about the brain dump is just do it. And here's the thing that I do. I like to time block. And when it comes to your course or whatever you're doing, I think time blocking is just important in general. And I need people to understand that it's just as important as any other appointment that you have. Time block it. So if you want to say, you know what, I'm going to work on my course content today or my program today. So I'm going to block my calendar from 11 to 1. During that time, that's all you need to work on. You may finish early. If you finish early, that's great, but at least you have it on your calendar. Because if I don't have it on my calendar, then it may not get done. I may have great intentions and say, you know what, I'm going to work on it today. But if it's not on my calendar and I don't plan it and keep it as an important item, then I may not do it. I'm like, I may be able to do it tomorrow or later this week. So that's why it's so important to just do it. Mark it on your calendar, time block it, and say for the next 2 hours, I'm going to work on, just getting these ideas out.
Yeah.
All right. So the next step is after you get the ideas out, now you have to organize the content. So I like to use the sticky note method. So some people use sticky notes, some people use index cards. Either way will work. And I like to use the sticky notes because usually when I'm brain dumping and I'm kind of like in my zone, I got like a big whiteboard out and I got this different color sticky tabs and I can move stuff around. So now that you have the brain dump out, you can use the sticky note tab or index cards to kind of organize your content. Now, when you're organizing your content, I don't want you to think of it in terms of modules or anything like that yet, or just content in general. Think about it in terms of lessons. Okay. So we're going to group our lessons because, using the sticky note, you can say, okay, let me make sure this makes chronological sense, right? If you're teaching something, okay, does that make sense? And if it doesn't make sense, then you can use the index cards or the sticky notes to kind of move it around on your whiteboard or however you're organizing that. So organizing your content. And then the next step we want to expand on our content. So this is where we're actually going to start, identifying what modules that we can develop based on the lessons that we did in the previous step. So in this step, you want to kind of aim toward, depending on your content, 4 to 6 modules. You may have more or less than that, depending on what it is that you're actually teaching. So I always say aim for 4 to 6 modules. And then within those modules, you may want to have 3 to 5 lessons within those modules. But again, you have your sticky notes so you can move things around. If you are using the index or sticky note method, then like I said, it's easier to move things around. And then you can also eliminate things as you need to as well. And then the next step, which is I call step 6, is you're actually writing your lessons. So now you've kind of got everything out of your head, right? You've kind of, did your brain dump. Now you have your sticky notes where you have, okay, this is the content that I can include. Now you want to be more strategic and diligent about, what does this lesson or this module, what will it contain? So this is where you're actually going to write your content. And I always say, always start with something that you already have, because most of us already have, like we have maybe free content that we've used. We have, different opt-ins that we've used. Depending on your expertise, there's so many things that we can leverage that we have already without starting from scratch. Yeah. And that's a great thing. So you can kind of plug those things in and then kind of supplement the content based on what you've identified, the goal that you're actually trying to achieve for your clients. And then the next step is review. So now you have your lessons, you have your modules, and now you're going to review to make sure that it makes chronological sense. And I always tell people, make sure you have like a business bestie or something like that you can have to run through your information, or maybe even somebody you just reach out to and say, hey, I would love for you to, take a look at this content. Maybe you can offer them something as an incentive for doing that, because we know what we want our content to be, but we have to make sure that it makes sense to others, right? If we're trying to sell this program, we want to make sure that it makes sense. It makes sense to us, right? Because we know it, this is what we do. So having someone else take a look at it and be able to ask questions, say, you know what, module 3 wasn't really clear. I wasn't sure, what you were trying to get to. So having someone to be able to do that and give you feedback while you're reviewing gives you an opportunity to make a few modifications before that program goes live. And then after that, you're ready to launch, right? And launching is, launch and implementation is a beast within itself, right? Because you have to make sure that you have the right technology. You have to make sure that, and here's the thing when it comes to technology also, and I've been doing this for a long time, so I always make, specific recommendations because I know what tools work nicely in the sandbox together, what tools play nicely in the sandbox together, because all of them don't. And you want to make it easy for folks to be able to register and consume your content without it being, like 10 different steps. Because by step 3, I done gave up. I'd be like, I don't know what's going on. I'm trying to give them my money and take this course, but there's so many different steps. So you want to make sure that when you're implementing that, you make it easy for people to be able to consume your content. So I'm going to do a quick review. So the first step is identifying the problem that you're solving. The second step is taking a look at your goals. So what goals do you want as part of your program? Think about it in terms of testimonials. And then step 3 is brain dumping your idea. So getting that information out of your head and onto paper where you can actually organize it. And then that's step 4, which is organizing your content. And I recommend the sticky notes or the index card method. And then step 5 is taking all of that information, and then you're going to group it and expand on those ideas. You're going to separate them into modules. And then step 6 is writing your lessons. And we talked about maybe having anywhere from 3 to 5 lessons for each module, depending on your content. And then you want to review, just make sure that everything makes sense. If there's something that you have in there that doesn't make sense, then maybe you can remove it. Maybe it's something that you can add to make another course later. But, all of that brain dump information, the information that you don't use, you also want to think about, how can I use this in the future? And then you want to move into implementation. So there we go.
Oh my gosh, you said so much. I'm trying to go back a little bit so I could pull apart all the gems. That was a lot. I think first of all, thank you for sharing your full process, because someone could take that and literally go create a best-selling course. So thank you for even just being that generous to share your process that way.
You're welcome.
I think the first thing I took from it, that the first thing, like the hierarching, overarching thing that I took from that was, this is a process. You don't just open up a account at some type of learning platform, learning management system, and then throw videos at it and say, I have a course.
Yes.
It's a lot more, it's a lot more strategic. It takes a lot more, it takes a lot of your, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, you have to be, the words on the tip of my tongue, like you have to be intentional. You have to be intentional about what you're putting together, the impacts you want to leave, the goals you want to set. So that's the first thing I took from it. But then a few things that stood out to me. So the first one was about the emails. and and I wanted to expand and kind of ask a follow-up question on that with the emails, because we hear this all the time, the money's in your list and all of that type of thing. But with the pace of content that is required for most course creators, coaches to create in order to stay present, in order to stay visible, sometimes email falls by the wayside. A lot of times email falls by the wayside. So, I wanted to come in and say, from my own experience of creating courses, is it's worth the time invested if you focus on not just building your email list, but nurturing them.
Yes.
Particularly around the goal you're solving with the course that you create. And you dropping that was very important. And I think a lot of us missed the ball with that, not realizing that people will continue to purchase from you updates to your course, additions to your course, workbooks you put out that go with the course, new courses. They'll continue to do business with you literally years in the future, because you nurtured them properly on an email list. We can't say the same for social media platforms.
No.
Not even a little bit, right?
No.
So it don't matter how many reels and TikToks you make. It's not the same connection. And that's something I learned in my 8 years of doing this work, is like the email list, literally, it's like how we used to have the phone books, or used to have an address book, and you would write down people's, it's personal. So that email is so critical. Once you do the work of creating a course this way, I think one of the things we have to remember is this is real people. That's real people are buying our products. Like real people are buying our IP. And so we just want to make sure that we keep them in mind throughout the whole process. Let me ask you a question. When you were talking about, when you were going into the part about organizing the content, that sticky note method, what would you suggest for someone who is kind of new to that sticky note method, or they get overwhelmed because they can't centralize it around one core problem or one core theme? What's a way to keep yourself in check so you don't get lost 2 months in the sticky note process,
right?
And whittle it down and get to the next step? What would you suggest for that?
Right, absolutely. So the first thing I would say is first you have to try it, because you don't know, if you've never done it before, then you can't say, you know what, I don't know how to do the sticky note method, or it doesn't work for me. So I have found that this has been easier than some other methods. So the easiest way to get started is, once you start those brain dumps, kind of just, with a pen or a marker, kind of just, write whatever that initial item is on the brain dump. And it was hard for me in the beginning too, because I'm like, pencil, paper, or I'm like, let me pull up a Google document and just do it that way. But when I started doing the sticky note method, what I like to do is use different color sticky notes for different types of content, right? So if I'm doing a brain dump, so let's say, for instance, let's just use systems. So if I'm doing something on systems, I may have like one color sticky notes that talks about the different systems that may work, let's say for creating your course or whatever the course platform is. So, okay, so for example, maybe Thinkific or Teachable or something like that. So I may have a certain color for those systems. The second one would be, okay, what do I need these systems to do? So I may have a different color for that, So I needed to be able to, do I want it to drip the content? Do I want for my students to be able to get all the content at once? And I'll just say, no, I don't. But so what do I want the system to do? And then after that, do I want it to, what are some of the nice to haves? Do I want it to be able to create like maybe certificates of completion, or is that not important to me? So, thinking about the goals and then what you want those things to do. So just play around with that sticky note method, because everybody's sticky note method is going to be different, right? You have to do what's going to be comfortable and easy for you, because if it's complicated, you're not going to do it.
Yeah.
And it's going to be just another thing that's on the list that's not completed, or your to-do list is not completed. So just think about it in terms of, just try it first, see what works for you. If some of the things work for you, and I say keep it in categories, like with the systems example. So what's the systems, here that I'm teaching, what do I want them to do? And, what are some of the benefits, that my students will have, as a result of this.
Yeah, I love how you break it down so simple, where it's like, okay, boom, I can put it in these 4 buckets and I can move right through it. Thank you for sharing that. What you said, if it's not simple, you're not going to do it. That's true for you and your customers. Like,
Yeah.
if it's not simple, nobody's doing it. So if you just keep that in mind as you go through this, it's such a satisfying feeling when you get a course done, when you launch it and when it's in the world and you see those first, couple of payments starting to come. It's such a satisfying feeling. So I just want to encourage anyone who's listening to this to take LaToya's advice, reach out to LaToya, and just figure out how you can get this thing into the world. Let me ask you, because you mentioned tech a couple of times.
Yes.
To what plays well in the sandbox, what things go good together. So what would you suggest, or what would you say is best practices for a new course creator when it comes to their tech stack? What's the easy ones to use together?
So here's what I'll say about that. There are some easy ones to use together, but what I like to do when I'm working with clients, because some of them already have some technology systems and tools in place. So I like to do an audit to kind of see what they're already using, because if you're already using something that's going to work well in the sandbox together, I don't want you to change that, right? Because you're already spending money on that. And another thing that people don't take a look at is how much is it going to take on the back end to launch this course. We'll talk a little bit about that in a second. But I like to do an audit, a systems audit, to see what you're already using. If the things that you're already using works well, that's great. Then we'll continue to move forward with that. Depending on what the goals are, I have recommendations that I have for my clients in certain tools to use, because you have to think about it again in terms of, what's important. Is it important that you drip content? Because if you're using a tool that doesn't drip content, then you don't want to go with that technology stack. So, do you want it to include gamification? That's a huge thing now. Do you want it to present or create certificates of completion? Do you want them to be able to complete, module 1 before they go to module 2? So there's a lot of things that plays into that. So there's not one particular answer that I can give for that. It's really based on the goals of the client. It is the goals of your course and how you want that to play out. So based on that, then I can make recommendations on what tools you should use. But I always like to do that. Audit, because a lot of people are paying for tools that they're not using.
Yeah.
Right? They're paying for two, they're not using. I'm like, well, how long you been paying for this? When was the last time you used it? I've been paying for it for a year, but I've never really used it. So, okay, so let's see if we can, get your money's worth, right? So, so that's one of the things too. You have to think about the budget too. It's not just the budget to get the course out. So do you have to hire, do you have to outsource some of this? Because at the end of the day, I always tell people, stay in your lane. If your lane isn't the technology piece, then you may want to outsource that. when it comes to creating your course, you're the content creator. So I really need folks to be able to stay in their lane. You write the content, and then let's make sure that either you have team members. If you don't have team members, then we can leverage, my team, or we can outsource, however you need to do that. But I need you to be able to stay in your lane, so you are showing up where you need to show up, and we can outsource the rest. So you have to have a budget. A lot of people, I'm always surprised that they don't have a budget or don't know what their budget should be. So it's not just having a budget for outsourcing. You have to have a budget for these tools that you're using. Because, say, for instance, if you're using WordPress, if you're not using WordPress, what tool are you using? Some of these tools that we need to work together, some of them you have to pay for, right? So you have to have a budget. If you don't have a budget, or you don't know what you need to have a budget for, you need to have funds allocated for that. So I wanted to add that in when I answered the question about the technology stack, because it's not just about the technology, it's also about, the funding piece of it, because a lot of people don't think about that. And that's why a lot of their programs or their courses don't launch, because they weren't prepared in terms of, I have to pay for the technology, but I also have to pay for the resources in terms of people and systems that's going to be able to help you implement your program.
Yes. And LaToya is a team member for Higher Grade Help. I'm just joking.
I love it.
I mean, y'all know she just took us to church for a minute. I'm constantly preaching this. Course creators, we launch, and I'm putting myself in this category because I've launched courses, but we launch, or we create, and never look at the back end. What's the support going to take? Who else do we need on the team when people start coming into this community? What do we even need to actually get it published? And you're so right. The budget is often forgotten about because, we see the end goal and what we want to bring in revenue, but not what the operational piece is actually going to look like. So that is, and funnily enough, we just started offering this service where we're helping people do the hiring process itself. So we've been doing that for clients behind the scenes. And we had a client we just worked with. We were going through her tech stack, same thing. She was launching a couple of new services, new courses, and she was paying $2,000 a month over in tech that she wasn't using. I'm like, this could be going to the team. You need this person hired this person, but we paying for tech that's sitting on your computer. Let's look at where we need to reallocate money. So, oh gosh, I mean, we could just end the episode right there with what you just
said. Right?
So let me ask you this then. A little bit controversial, but this is not really controversial. We just hear this question. I hear this question get asked a lot. What do you tell your clients to do when they ask you, should I pre-record this curriculum or do I teach it live?
That's a great question. And I have an answer for you.
Good.
I think for me, I always say it depends on the customer or the client, right? If they're a person that is good when it comes to recording content, then I say record the content. If they're not comfortable doing it live, that's just going to be another barrier that they're going to have to overcome, right? So I don't want you to, feel a certain type of way, and now we are behind on launching because you don't feel comfortable doing it live. So it really depends on the person, right? If you feel more comfortable recording, you're going to get those recordings out, and then we can launch on schedule. If we say, okay, I recommend that you do it live. And I'm saying this based on experience because, there's so many things in the industry where they say, okay, you can do a live launch. But if you have a person that's not comfortable with that, then the launch may be delayed or it may even be canceled. So at the end of the day, my goal with my clients is to be able to, you've been doing this for a long time. You haven't launched yet. So my goal is to come in and be able to help you launch this program, help you to be able to recoup some of the money, help you to be able to recoup some of your time. Mm-hmm. And if it's better for you to record, then what I'm going to do is make sure that the task that I have for you is based on you recording. Okay, how many modules do we have? So when do we need to record this by? So I'm staying on top of you in terms of making sure that you get your recordings done. If you feel better doing it live, then that's what our tasks are going to look like. When do we need to record live? So we want to make sure that we're doing it live. If you're doing it with your students in a group setting, that's great. Once you record it live, then you can use that as evergreen in the future if you choose to do so. I have a client now, and she just prefers to do everything live. And that's okay. That works for her, but it doesn't work for everybody. So it really depends on your client's personality or your personality, because if you're not comfortable doing it live, then you're just going to continue to drag your feet and not feel, warm and fuzzy on the inside about the process. So that may give you a bad taste in your mouth about the process, because that's not where you naturally feel comfortable. So like, again, if it doesn't feel comfortable for you, or, if it doesn't come easy to you, you're not going to do it. And I don't want that to be a reason why you don't launch, because, hey, people need the information that you have, and we need to get it out there into the world so that you can start making money, monetizing your gifts.
Absolutely. And increasing your reach and your impact. And you know what I'm saying? That when you're doing that consistently, that money is like icing on the cake. You're like, I can't believe I'm getting paid to do this. But what I heard, that's how it feels. And what I heard you say was, don't take cookie cutter advice. So many people say you have to record it live, or you have to no. What I heard you say was, don't put barriers in your way. Do what's going to make you feel most comfortable, what's going to help you move through to completion. And you can evergreen it later. You can leverage it. And for those who don't know what evergreen, let me just clarify. So evergreening is if you want to take your course and you can put it on like constant enrollment, right? Like you could put a webinar funnel behind it, something where people are enrolling from ads and they're constantly enrolling in your course. You could do that later if you live record it. So there's so many options. I'm gonna keep referring you guys to just message LaToya, reach out to her when she'll tell you in a second how to get in contact, so that you can really have an expert, a true expert in this by your side, helping you do this. We're coming into, this couple of questions I want to ask you, LaToya, at the end, just to get your feel for this. What do you foresee coming? Then I want you to share with the listeners how they can contact you. But this is something I'm dying to know. Where do you see the course industry heading next?
I personally see the course industry just catapulting, in the future and beyond. And I've been in the learning space for over 20 years. My background in corporate was in learning and development.
Wow.
One of the things before COVID that I experienced is that when I was trying to get people to say, okay, let's get your program online. A lot of people weren't open to that because they were not familiar with the process. Once COVID hit and everybody was going online, whether it was for school, whether it was for business, their perspectives changed. So I see, technology isn't going anywhere. What it's going to do is just going to continue to evolve. So when it comes to courses and things of that nature, being online, offering your programs or your expertise online, I just see that evolving. Technology just continues to improve and get better as time goes on. So to answer that question, I say, it's going to continue to evolve. So now is the time. If you haven't jumped in on the ground floor yet, now is the time to do that, because it's not going anywhere. That's just going to be able to help you leverage multiple streams of income in the future.
Yeah.
And
I love it. Yes, that was my experience when I was in the crypto space. We were doing crypto like 2016, 2017. Nobody was Bitcoin
Right.
was that, right? But we kept saying, hey, you want to get your stuff online. It's going digital. Everything is going blockchain. People were buying courses with blockchain. And with Bitcoin, we kept trying to, and then when COVID came, it was the wave. It was like,
yes.
3 years ago, we were trying. So I agree with you. Everything's pushed into this space. Don't wait for the next major world event to move yourself into the space. Like position your business so that it has sustainability, regardless of what comes or doesn't come, or what the future looks like. Thank you for that insight. Now, LaToya, how can you? So we covered a lot.
We did.
Your 6 steps to planning your course content. Like you really went in on this one. How can someone who's like convinced, okay, I know I need to do this, how would you be able to help them? And what's the best way they can learn more about you?
Yeah, absolutely. So, so the best way to reach out to me is my website, LaToyaFrazier.com, Frazier. So I offer several different programs. So right now, if you look at the site, we're in the process of getting some of our courses, our self-paced courses on the site. But I also offer group coaching. I offer mentoring, and I also offer strategy plans. So I work with clients where they have a team, but they don't actually know how to do the strategy piece. So we work together where we can actually do the strategy together. So I give you the full plan. You can take it and implement it with your team, or you can hire me to do the implementation. Today we talked about the just the content itself. We touched a little bit on the implementation, but the implementation is a whole nother ballgame, right? So it's one thing to get your course out there, or at least to get it, the framework and to get it built. But then there's that other piece where you're monetizing it and you're actually implementing it. And I want to say this real quick, because I thought about this when you were talking, Sina, when we were talking about building your list. It's very important. I see people all the time. They purchase people to be on their list. And I've had clients that have done that, but when they get ready to launch their courses and their programs, they wonder why people aren't buying. I have a list of 10,000, but nobody's buying. That's because when you purchase those lists, those may not necessarily be your ideal customers. So if you're doing it organically and you're nurturing that list, that's going to make a difference. You can launch a program with a small list as long as it's the right buyers. So I wanted to say that. So if you're purchasing a list, keep in mind, you may have a huge list, but it may not be your list of buyers. They may not be your ideal customer. So you could be nurturing them, but when it comes to you launching your programs, they're not going to buy because that your program just, isn't in their realm of things that they're looking to purchase.
Yes. Please make sure you contact LaToya. I can attest to that. I've had my personal experience and clients who literally had lists of 300 people and did course launches of 15,000, 20,000, 25,000 because they were the right people. They were their red carpet clients, ideal clients. So
Yeah.
I can attest to that. I've seen that. And that is so, so, so true. If you're listening to this right now and you need help with not just planning your course, but that launch piece, that's its own beast, that implementation part where you're like, what's all the moving pieces? How do I put the pieces together? What's the puzzle? Save yourself the time and make the choice to really work with LaToya and the investment. I'm telling you, it'll be worth. It's gonna save you. It'll save you months. Seriously, it'll save you months, possibly years of trying to figure it out on your own. So, reach out to her. Make sure I have all of the information. We'll have all the information in the show notes below, and make sure you reach out to work with her. LaToya, any final words or words of wisdom you want to say before we wrap up?
Oh, let's see. So one thing I think about is it's a quote. I'm not even sure who quoted this, but this has been something that I've been standing on and I've been sharing with folks over the past couple of months. Is when it comes to personal or business, when we're talking about launching, your programs. So I always say, I'd rather regret the things that I did versus the things that I didn't do. So if you have a course or a program idea that you're thinking about, maybe you've been thinking about it for years. I hear people say, well, I've been wanting to do this for years and now I'm finally able to do it. So if you do it and it's a success, great. If it's not a success, that's okay too. You did it. So you don't have any regrets of not doing it, right? And if it didn't work, let's take a look at the things that you did that didn't work, right? And then you can always relaunch that thing again and have, success. So I'd rather regret the things I did versus the things that I didn't do. So don't hold on to those things. Let's get your programs launched.
That's it. Mic drop. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Higher Grade Health Podcast. Make sure you reach out to LaToya and we will see you for the next one.